Bola Oba's AI video series on Dr. Samuel Johnson's History of the Yorubas, Episode 5, Yoruba Governmental Structure. Disclaimer. This production is a synoptic AI video dramatization of Chapter 4 of the book History of the Yorubas by Reverend Samuel Johnson, edited and posthumously published by his brother, Dr. Obadiah Johnson. Both were 19th century Yoruba Christian converts, and their interpretations reflect the worldview and moral outlook of their era. Ditto their pro-Oyo, which they often refer to as Yoruba Proper, bias, as many first-generation Yoruba-educated natives, especially returnees from Freetown in Sierra Leone, were indoctrinated to believe by their Church Missionary Society, CMS, teachers. However, as the egalitarian creed of the extant Yoruba anthem espouses,
all men are equal.
The history of the Yorubas, governance and royalty. Introduction to the Yoruba state. The entire Yoruba country has never been thoroughly organized into one complete supranational government in a modern sense. The system that prevailed was essentially feudal. Its remoter portions always existed in a state of semi-independence, loosely acknowledging an overlord at the center. The King of Benin, for example, was one of the first to become independent of the central government, achieving notoriety among foreigners who frequented his ports, yet knew nothing of his overlord in the unexplored interior. Yoruba Proper, i.e., the Oyo-accented Yoruba, however, was completely organized. The constitutional, administrative, and hierarchical descriptions that follow refer chiefly to this core region. Most smaller governments were modeled after it, though in a much simpler form, solely managing their domestic affairs. Foreign relations, before the revolution that disintegrated the empire, were entirely in the hands of the central government at Oyo-Ile, Eyeo, or Katunga. It is crucial to remember that the coast tribes then held much less importance, both in population and intelligence, than they do now. Light and civilization among the Yorubas came from the north, a connection retained through the Arabs and Fulanis. The center of life and activity, of large populations and industry, was therefore in the interior. The coast tribes, scanty in number and often ignorant and degraded, suffered not only from their distance from this center of light, but also from demoralizing intercourse with Europeans connected with the overseas slave trade. Shift in power and the absolute monarchy. This state of affairs was somewhat reversed in the latter half of the 19th century. This was due to the suppression of the slave trade and the subsequent substitution of legitimate commerce, a process accelerated by missionaries who entered the country concurrent with the rise of modern towns like Lagos, Abeokuta, and Ibadan. Through these new centers, Western light and civilization began to beam into the interior. The government of Yoruba Proper was an absolute monarchy. The king was more dreaded than even the gods. The office was hereditary within the same family, though not necessarily passed from father to son. The king, or Aláàfin, was usually elected by a body of noblemen known as the Oyo Mesi, the 7 principal councilors of state. At the empire's zenith, the vassal or provincial kings, or obas, and ruling princes numbered 1,060, encompassing territories such as the Pokpos, Dahomey, parts of Ashanti, the Takpas, and the Baribas. The term king in this country applied to all distinguished chiefs ruling important districts or provinces, especially those who traced their descent from the nation's founder. These rulers held different grades, akin to the orders of the English peerage: dukes, marquises, earls, viscounts, and barons. The Onikoyi, as head of the Ekun Osi, or metropolitan province, was the first among these kings, leading them annually to Oyo to pay homage to the Aláàfin, the king of the Yorubas.
The Aláàfin and the Aremo.
The Aláàfin was the supreme head of all kings and princes of the Yoruba nation, being the direct lineal descendant and successor of the reputed founder. Succession was by election from among the royal family members, prioritizing worth, age, and proximity to the throne. Even the feelings and acceptance of the denizens of the harem toward the king-elect were privately ascertained beforehand. In earlier days, the eldest son naturally succeeded his father, often being associated in important duties and effectively reigning under the title of Aramon, the heir apparent. However, as the age grew corrupt, the Aramon often exercised sway equal to or greater than the monarch, especially during a long reign that rendered the king feeble. They held equal powers of life and death over the king's subjects. There are recorded cases where the Aramon was strongly suspected of terminating the father's life to attain full power at once. To check this parricide, a law was made. As the Aramon reigned with his father, he must also die with him. This law remained in effect until the last century, repealed in 1858 by Aláàfin Atiba in favor of his Aramon Adelu. Today, the Aramon may succeed if found worthy and elected, but if rejected by the kingmakers, he must retire privately to the provinces. While no longer strictly obligatory to die with the king, such a course became inevitable if superseded. The choice might sometimes fall upon a poor prince quietly pursuing his trade. Such a one was often subjected to unexpected ill usage, perhaps to test his temper before the Oyo Mesi formally admonished him regarding the duties and responsibilities of his exalted position.
Nomination came from three titled members of the royal family, the Onaisokun, Onaka, and Omola, collectively known as the Kingmakers.
They submitted names for election, but the Basorun's voice was paramount for acceptance or rejection. Accession ceremonies. Accession was preceded by curious and elaborate ceremonies. The initial rite involved a sacrifice brought by the Omo Ninari, a family dedicated to menial duties for the king and priests. The king-elect was touched on the chest and shoulders with the sacrificial bowl, signaling his call to the throne. He then spent the first night at the Ona Isokun's house, conducted quietly to avoid the populace, who were distracted by a noisy procession of the king's slaves.
At the Onaisokun's house, it was attended solely by the Omoninari, receiving admonition and undergoing purification ceremonies. More propitiatory sacrifices were offered and carried to various quarters of the city by the Omoninari. The second night was spent at the house of the Otunwefa, second in rank to the chief eunuch and the priest of Sagu, the god of thunder. This still likely served to initiate the king-elect into his sacerdotal duties, as the Aláàfin was both king and priest.
He then resided for 3 months, the period of mourning, in the outer court of the palace, Omo Ilhe, until his coronation. During this time, he remained in strict privacy, learning the style and deportment of a king. Dressed in black, he used the cap of state called
Orikogbe Ofo. The head may not remain uncovered. State affairs were managed by the Basorun.
the coronation and the bara. The coronation took place at the end of 3 months, usually timed for the third appearance of the new moon after the late king's death. It was a day of great public demonstration, known as the king's visit to the bara. The bara, or royal mausoleum, was a consecrated building under the high priestess Iyamode, where kings were formally buried and, historically, crowned. The king-elect halted first at the ahata in front of the palace to change his mourning clothes for a princely robe. He then proceeded to the bara, accompanied only by key officials, including the Magaji Iyajin, his official elder brother, and the Otun Wefa. Here, at the sacred precincts, he worshipped at the tombs of his fathers, offering a horse, a cow, and a ram at each tomb. Portions of the meat were sent to the nobles waiting outside, the Basorun receiving the largest share. By invoking the blessings of his deceased ancestors, the king received authority to wear the crown. This act of seeking permission at the bara is why the visit is often synonymous with the coronation. A fixed rule dictated that all the meat had to be consumed totally at the bara itself. Returning with pomp, the king then proceeded on the 5th day to Koso, the shrine of Sango, for the actual crowning. Here, the great crown was placed on his head by the Iyekere. The royal robes were donned, the ejigba, a string of costly beads, the chain of office, was placed around his neck, and the staff and the sword of mercy were placed in his hands. swords of office, and final entry. 5 days later, at the shrine of Aláàfin or Oromiyan, the great sword or sword of justice from Ile-Ife was placed in his hands. Without this, he could not order an execution. After another 5 days, he offered a propitiatory sacrifice to Ogun, the god of war, for a peaceful reign. From Ogun's shrine, the procession went straight to the palace. Entering for the first time by the main gate, which was promptly walled up behind him, he entered the palace proper as the king. A new exclusive opening was made for him at the Kobi Aganju to the inner precincts. At this entrance, a multitude of sacrificial offerings were made: a snail, a tortoise, an armadillo, various rodents, fowl, ram, cow, horse, and historically, a man and a woman. The last two were buried at the threshold of the opening. Over the blood of the victims and the grave of the final pair, he had to walk into the inner court. Human sacrifices, now totally abolished, were not common among the Oyos, but were performed at the coronation and burial of the sovereign. By these rites, the king was not only crowned with power over all, but also consecrated as the nation's priest. His person, consequently, became sacred. Post-coronation and government officers. Following the ceremonies, it was formally announced to the assembled public that King A was dead, or had entered into the vault of the skies.
Owo Aja.
And King B now reigned. The king was henceforth forbidden to appear in public streets by day, a seclusion that enhanced his majesty and provided a safeguard for public order. It was an inviolable law. If the king was out, the entire city had to be astir and on the move, with all business suspended until he returned. The very first official act was to create an Aramon, crown prince, and a princess royal. The Aramon was formally invested with the robes of office and a coronet after a period of residence and festivities, taking up his permanent official abode. The Oyo Mesi, led by the Basorun, remained the highest noblemen and kingmakers. The Basorun served as the prime minister, holding immense power, including the prerogative to move for the king's rejection if he became unconstitutional or tyrannical, forcing the king to die. The Ishors, or guardians of the kingdom, formed the second class of noblemen. This military title was conferred solely on tried and proven soldiers. The foremost among them was the Kakanfo, a field marshal figure who bore 201 incisions on his occiput for courage and was forbidden to ever turn his back in battle. An Ishor must never be shot in the back. His wounds must always be right in front. The elaborate structure, from the secluded Aláàfin to the powerful Basorun and the fearless Kakanfo, showcases a complex system of absolute monarchy, balanced by a constitution of checks and counter-checks, a system that largely worked well for the Yoruba nation.
With a style so divine, never missed a party, always first in the line.
Echo Round City. In the heart of Lagos, long before hashtags and influencers, there were kings of the streets, big boys who ruled the 1980s and 1990s. Their swagger, their hustle, their code. Now, for the first time ever, their untold story comes alive. From the pages of an authorized biography to the big screen of your imagination, stay tuned for the book-to-movie premiere of Echo Round City, the authorized biography of one of Lagos's legendary street big boys, streaming exclusively on youtube.com at Bola Oba from January 1st, 2026. Echo Round City, the legend lives on.